Hey everyone, it's Always Improving, and today I'm going to be painting another portrait with watercolors. I really love painting portraits. It might be just because I paint them a lot and I think I'm pretty good at them, but I wanted to get better and continue to get better in the future, so today I am doing another portrait.
So here's
The
the image
sketching
I'm
process
painting.
itself
It's actually a
wasn't
model
anything
I've
too
painted before,
fancy.
and
I
his name's on
simply
screen now.
wanted to
And
get
now I can
kind of the
begin
style I
sketching out her
wanted. Of
facial
course,
features
I usually
and
do
the other
realism,
components
but
of this
in both of
image.
my original two sketches that I did at the top of the page, they were a little bit more stylized, especially the one on the right. I didn't like that one as much. I actually did like the style I did in my first sketch, but for my final sketch on the bottom, I looked at my reference and put some grid lines on it and made those grid lines on my paper with a ruler so I could accurately describe and draw her features and get more of a realism, a real sketch down. Now before I can begin with my actual paints, I need to do a light sketch so that I can really get the structure down on the watercolor paper. I know I did do a couple of sketches already, so it won't be anything too in-depth, just something so I know where I can put certain colors and where I should keep the highlights. Now that my sketch is done and laid out, I can get out my paints, my paint brushes, and my water, along with my watercolors. So exciting! So the first thing I'm going to do is probably lay out her skin, just get a base coat, and we'll move on from there. Even though I said I was doing a base coat for the skin, I want to emphasize that I started with the shadows. I really wanted to work in those deeper shades first so I could build up layers and layers of color without having to worry about the contrast as much. I wanted to get in those shadows first. I also kind of forgot to add red in the skin initially like I wanted to. It was a good skin tone, but I also think it was lacking a little bit of depth and realism that I needed to add, and I will do so later in the piece. But I didn't forget to do the hands with the skin, so that's good. I did do that a couple of times in my other portrait illustrations, but yeah, I think it was turning out pretty good. So for the base coat of the hair, I wanted to try to combat the gray look that I seem to get whenever I use brown, or especially a dark brown for hair. And so I tried to use a lot more orange colors and orange tones and mix them with their complementary colors instead of just adding a lot of brown and one shade. I wanted to make a new, more organic brown that would turn out less gray in the hair because I felt like last time the hair really turned out more gray than I wanted to, at least initially, and I had to add more and more layers to make it more of a natural brown hair color. So after adding a base coat for her sweater and for her lips, I go back in with more shadows, just making them darker and making them more pronounced in the areas they need to be. In the image, there was kind of a contrasting shadow versus highlights. Specifically on her nose, there was more highlights than on the right side of her face and on her lower cheek, where there was a big streak of shadow that I really wanted to make sure was pronounced, and I wanted to emphasize it in the image. So I added the black shadow that you can kind of see in the image where her sweater meets her kind of face and her hair. So I added that really black shadow, and then I also wanted to fix the kind of patchiness I saw on her face, so I smoothed out her skin and added some more red tones. Like I said, I wanted to make sure to emphasize how the skin is more red than I had originally painted in most of my portraits. Yeah. I also added the base color and wanted to start shading her eyes. And here began the long process of the sweater. I felt like, just like with the hair, I couldn't get a good brown color and it just ended up looking so dull. So you'll see me numerous times throughout this video go back and add layer after layer of more, I don't even know how to explain it, more saturated brown, more orangey brown, less of a dull color. I wanted it to be more of a natural color and less so, I don't know, it just looked great to me. And so again, you'll see me a lot going back to the sweater and adding a layer or fixing some details and just making it look better, I guess. In this portion of the video, I'm just adding details, fixing up her lips, adding more to the sweater, adding her eyebrows and eyelashes, just various details, even shadows. I just want to kind of finalize a few areas of the painting. Of course, I don't mean finalize necessarily, but more flesh out some of the areas and just get more anchors down so I can tell what the final image will look like more so. After adding all those details to her face and to her sweater, I wanted to go in and add more to her hair, kind of make it more, again, more saturated, less gray toned, and really figure out where I wanted her hair to flow. I changed the shape of it a lot during this point of the video and just kind of added more details to it and continued to add layers throughout the rest of this process. Even though I had fleshed out most of the hair and its location in the drawing, here's where I really started to add those shadows and variances of color, different tones of brown and darker shadows. In the reference photo, her hair is almost black. It's so brown and so dark. So I wanted to kind of start building up that color to get more of a brownish, blackish hair color, especially in the shadow region, where her hair really looked almost completely black. So here's where I really started to add that shadow and that depth to her hair. Much like the hair in this last kind of segment of the video, I was really just getting more details onto the skin, adding more variations in the shadows and highlights, adding more red to the skin, and also with the sweater, again, I was adding many layers, trying to get a better color and better saturation for it. But yeah, I was just kind of trying to build up the different layers of watercolor and kind of use them how they're supposed to. A lot of light washes on top of one another to get that really nice, clean effect and gradient that watercolor can bring. after kind of finishing her hair and her skin and mostly done with her sweater as well, I hone in on her lips because I felt like I didn't focus on them a lot and I didn't want to cop out and just do kind of basic ones. I wanted to put in as much detail as I could, and I also finalized her eyes. But with her lips, I used my technique that I learned last time. I added white, and again, it's kind of controversial, but it really helps for me to get a good color. I really like the color that it brings for lips, partially because I think it helps me blend them out and kind of add like the highlights and the sheens that that lips have generally. And I also realized that she had a little bit of a yellow tone in the bright parts of her lips, so I wanted to add that as well. And I was able to do that more so with the white than I would have if I had just added yellow directly onto her already red lips. So yeah, I just was finalizing her lips, adding some shadows and some details into them, and I think it really helped bring more realism and more detail into her face. And with the final details complete, I can finally sign this piece and call it an end. I really enjoyed painting this piece. I have a lot of fun with portraits. I think they're my favorite watercolor thing to paint, just because I've practiced them so much, and I think I'm pretty good at knowing where the highlights need to be, and I'm getting better every time I do them. So I again thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.